Hey there, it's Matt. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to this brand new episode of Courage and Clarity, a conversation with leaders about how to get the most out of all that you've been given. Hope you're doing well. Want to continue our conversation about preaching and really want to wrestle with this question. Do you know where you're going? Now, probably 10 years ago, the illustration that we would have used to talk about this is the frustrated wife in the passenger seat and her husband just continuing to belligerently drive around, lost as a ball in high weeds, but not willing to ask for directions, not willing to ask for any help, and an exasperated spouse asking, do you know where you're going? Now, thanks to GPS, which we all have on our phones, we don't really get to use that illustration anymore. But I was actually thinking about this morning. I have three separate friends, three different groups, two families, and then a woman who's married, and they're all at Disney World. They don't know each other. They're all at Disney World, and it's been really fascinating over the last couple of days to watch their experiences, which are very, very, very different. So, a woman who's married that went down there, she went down there to run a half marathon and stayed for a few days. And, her conversation is, it's great, but the lines are crazy. We're having to stand in line so much. And that's a pretty common experience if you go to Disney World, right? And then we have one of the families who went down there, and they went down there with a plan. They went down there knowing that they needed to show up at this this particular ride at this part of the day, and that was going to maximize their opportunity to ride rides. But they kind of had to carve it out from scratch and really kind of figure out and piece together a plan. And then there's the third family, the kind of the third group that I know, and they have their oldest son is autistic. And so one of the things that Disney does that's fantastic is that if you have a special needs child, then you're going to get to go to the front of the line, and they're going to give you a plan about where to go. So you basically go no plan at all, and a lot of frustration, kind of your own made up plan, and it's better than nothing, but you're still having to stand in line, and it's still kind of a little bit annoying. And then you have the kind of done for you plan where you get to the front of the line and you kind of get told, here's where you need to go next. And so I think that plays a lot into preaching and some of the things that we talk about with the importance of systems and structures. For me, about 4 years ago, when I decided to be bivocational and took on a full-time job with a fairly large church planning network here in the States, and I had to reimagine preaching on two levels. One is I just simply didn't have as much time to prepare as I used to, and second, there was the just sort of the mental, emotional scrambling to get things done that I knew I couldn't afford. Like, I couldn't afford to exhaust the energy that I was having to expend trying to figure out what was next. I kind of just needed to have a plan that was laid out to where I just showed up and did the next thing. And so what happened for me is that I spent a lot of time developing three different kinds of systems. And we've talked about these over the last couple of episodes, that I developed a planning system so I could really look ahead and make sure I knew where I was going and I wasn't just going sermon to sermon and series to series. Created a preparation system that allowed me to really organize my message and organize my time in getting ready. And then created a delivery system because I wanted to make sure that even as I was listening to other preachers, that I was able to find and use the voice that God gave me. I didn't want to basically adopt other people's practices, other people's habits, just because it worked well for them. And so as we've talked about those three systems, a planning system, a preparation system, a delivery system, I want to spend the next few episodes really digging into some of the details of these systems so that you can take it and use it for you. What I want to do is to be able to answer the question, do you know where you're going as a preacher? And to be able to give you a very clear answer. Do you know where you're going? Get a planning system, get a preparation system, get a delivery system, and you're going to know exactly where you need to go to preach better sermons. And so here's what I want to share with you today. I want to talk about the four elements that you need if you're going to have a healthy planning system. If you're going to have a healthy planning system, you need to have these four things. Are there other things you can do? Sure, absolutely. But use these as the foundation and build on them. So the very first thing you need, the first element of a healthy planning system, is a annual calendar. you need an annual preaching calendar where you can basically look 6 to 12 months at a time and know where you're going. It is going to be the single most significant tool to keep you going from week to week, sermon to sermon, series to series. Now, creating an annual calendar isn't that difficult. You can do something very, very simple. You just get a spreadsheet and you create a column for the date that you're going to preach your sermons, a column for the text that you're going to preach, maybe a column for the big idea. If you are thinking about in terms of sermon series, then create a column for sermon series. And I like to create a column for notes where I can just add anything, where it's going to be, it's this particular holiday or this particular, person on our team is going to be out. If I'm going to be out, that's how we let people know what dates I'm not going to be preaching. And then we also have other things because we're in a university context where college football is very, very big. Then we have the schedule in our notes section. So we kind of know because there's a distinct difference in our attendance on Sundays based on whether or not Georgia is playing at home or on the road. And so just that very simple system, a spreadsheet with those 5 columns, and you begin to fill in the blanks and get ahead. Think, 6 to 12 months at a time. That single practice right there is going to do more for you than you can imagine in making sure that you're not scrambling to think about what we're preaching next. I already know what we're preaching for Easter, which is several months away. I already know exactly what we're going to be preaching on this summer. Matter of fact, I know what we're preaching all the way through summer of 2018, but that's a different story for a different day. But an annual preaching calendar is a critical element of a healthy planning system. The second element of a healthy planning system is to build a preaching team. And so way too many of us think that we basically have to carry this load alone. And I know a lot of guys that are preaching 51 Sundays a year. And I just don't think that's healthy, first off. And so the way that you bridge that gap and get from here to there so you're not preaching all the time and you're not carrying all the load for sermon research and preparation is to build a simple team, to grab 2 to 4 other people that can help you with sermon long-term planning, that can help you with sermon research, that can help you do some writing, and even having 1 or 2 of those people who are actually carrying the load of preaching. And so it's a great way for you to develop other people. It's a great way to do leadership development, but it really is that simple. You find 2 to 4 people that seem to take an interest in preaching that have a particular role. So I want somebody on my team who's going to help me with research. I'm going to have at least one other person who's preaching. We right now have 3 other people on our team with us. We're kind of recruiting a 4th. We're recruiting a woman because we really feel like it's important to have her perspective on the team and to be able to get sort of just another angle and not just have a bunch of dudes sitting around a table trying to preach for a congregation that has men and women. We feel like it's important to have a woman's voice as well. Find somebody who can help you with research. Find somebody who can help you with writing. Find somebody else who can preach. Invest your time in them. Help them understand what you're trying to achieve. And then slowly over time, you're going to be able to back off and not preach as often. So in 2017, I think I'm scheduled to preach somewhere, 35-ish weeks maybe. I've got a sabbatical built in there. But the principle there is if you will begin building your team, that the effort you need to put in the short run is going to pay off long term, and you're going to have other people who can carry the load. And so you're going to be able to take time off, and you're also going to be able to plan ahead. So all of our guys on our preaching team know what weeks they're preaching through 2017, because when you have a team and you combine that with a calendar, then you're able to think ahead, right? So that's the second element. Make sure that you build a healthy team. The third element is to preach the gospel in every sermon from whatever text that you're in. Now, we have a lot of people from different parts of the world, different denominations, theological tribes that watch these videos. And so for you, when you hear preach the gospel, you might think, well, that's Christian preaching, and I would agree. Others of us think of preaching the gospel and think of it as a type of preaching. It's like evangelistic preaching versus topical preaching versus expositional preaching. And so for me, I don't care what approach you take. In the end, if your message is going to be a Christian message, then it needs to be good news. It has to communicate the gospel of Jesus in his life, death, resurrection as the fulfillment of all that God has promised to do to take a broken world and put it back together. Now, there are different aspects of the gospel. You have the gospel of forgiveness, that Jesus died for our sins, the gospel of adoption, that because of what Jesus has done, then he has removed every obstacle and every barrier from God the Father us and treating us as one of his children. There's the gospel of the kingdom, where God is up to, again, the work of putting broken things back together and making everything sad come untrue and wiping away every tear from every eye. And so you and I, day in and day out, through all the vocations that we have unique roles to play in that kingdom. And so different aspects of that singular gospel of forgiveness, adoption, or the kingdom, are going to come out in our preaching, and they should. And so if you don't understand how to preach the gospel, then that's something that you need. You need to be able to think ahead in that and plan that way and have a framework for thinking about preaching the gospel so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel week after week and series after series. So you need to be able to understand that whatever text of the Bible you're preaching from, Old Testament, New Testament, from the prophets, wisdom literature, the Torah, to the New Testament, narratives, the Gospels, the epistles, whatever it might be, whatever genre, whatever text that you're preaching from, in every sermon, you should be able to preach the gospel. And that's a critical element in any healthy planning system. And then finally, the fourth element that I think is absolutely vital for a healthy planning system is for you to be able to preach to your context. So God puts you in your city and in your church. He didn't put you in another church in your city, and he didn't put you in another city, in another part of the world at a different time. So wherever you are, that space between your 2 feet, that is the place, and the people in front of you are the people that you are called to communicate this timeless message to, but to shape it in such a way that you are able to grab their attention, pique their curiosity, and help really allow the gospel, the message of the Bible, to really get into every nook and cranny of their life. And so how does our preaching connect with people in the way that they think, and the way they feel, and the way that they live? And how does the gospel begin to transform the way they think, feel, and live? And so that isn't just something that we should take and think of two-dimensionally. And so what I do find far too often is that in certain tribes, we either overplay or underplay contextualization. And sometimes our messages don't even sound anywhere close to the Bible because we have basically over-contextualized. And we've taken the timeless message of the Bible and we have framed out our views on certain political, sociological, economic views, moral views, ethical views, and it doesn't even look like the Bible anymore. That we're taking very small bits of the Bible and we're taking them out of context because it makes more sense to our people. But I also see a lot of under-contextualization. I see a lot of people talking like it's 1957. I see a lot of people talking in a suburban setting like they're in New York City. I see a lot of people settings that are talking like they're living in 18th century England. And so again, you are called to preach to your people living in your city and the time and space in which you find yourself. And so I think it's absolutely vital that you have a framework for understanding your context and communicating to that context. So when you add contextualization, preaching the gospel to a team with a clear plan and calendar, that I think makes up a healthy planning system. What that does for you is it allows you to clearly answer the question, where are we going in the preaching ministry of our church? And one of the things you can even do is to use that calendar as a framework in which all of your church revolves around that. Like the preaching of the scriptures really does impact your men's ministry, your women's ministry, your student ministries, your children's ministry, your campus ministries. Everything revolves around that. And that's a very, very smart strategy in which the entire church is going in the same direction. But here's the deal. Again, the reason that we do these videos is because we want to bring some clarity to you so that you can step up courageously and take action. So what I want you to do is, if you're watching this, let's go ahead and assume that you're going to do this. Go ahead and carve out and begin to build a healthy planning system for preaching. Now, you may already have some of this in place, and so, high five yourself. Good job. Continue to make those good things better. And if there are parts of this that we've talked about, any of these elements that are missing, begin to build them out. And if you're a little bit confused about what that could look like, then look in the title area of this video where we explain everything that's going on. And there's a link to a free resource that we've created. It's, I think, a 5-page PDF on basically the 3 systems you need to preach better sermons. And it's going to give you a checklist to work through not just the elements of a healthy planning system, but elements of a healthy preparation and delivery system as well. And so it's going to basically walk you through the importance of systems. It's going to give you a clear way to be able to kind of evaluate, do you have these systems in place? How good are they? And to give you kind of a clear next step in order to get better. So it's completely free to you. You just download that and hope that'll be very, very helpful for you. So when we come back in the next episode, we're going to dive into a preparation system and talk about the importance importance not just of planning ahead, but of having a healthy preparation system that allows you to organize your message, organize your schedule, so that you can get the most out of your preaching. And again, that's what we're doing in these episodes. I really believe that God has given you a ton of gifts, and so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to help you make the most out of all that God's given you. So go ahead, download that free resource, come back for the next episode, and look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day, and God bless.